Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fun List Friday, right here on the Eat, Sleep, List YouTube channel. My name is Matt Johnson, your host, and today I want to talk about the dying art of physical reading materials, magazines, comics, newspapers, and so much more. Let's make a list. Growing up, around this time of year, having handheld, physical, printed media, reading materials, whatever the heck you want to call it, printed publications, I don't know. I don't know if there's a specific term, but it just hit differently. It was really good. Really good. At least on my end, at least from my vantage point, and here's why. We're a couple weeks away from December already. Gross. But around this time as a child, growing up in Niagara Falls, there'd be a lot of Christmas catalogs coming in. All right? Because we had a lot of great department stores in the area. A lot of great ones. A lot of electronics and toy stores and so much more. I think back to the heyday of the 90s. There's Bon-Ton, Sears, Jens, JCPenney, Media Play, Toys R Us, KB Toys, Walmart, Target, Jens. I think we had a Jens. I might have said Jens already. I don't know, but there was a lot. That's 7 or 8 at least. 7, 8, or 9 at least catalogs that you get to you'd expect in the mail. You get to see what's coming in. What is the hot new toy? What video games are coming out? That sort of thing. It's exciting as a kid. Growing up in high school, I wrestled. I was all right at it. I was kind of good. And it was always really cool to see your name and sometimes your face in the newspaper. So after a dual meet the day after or Sunday after a tournament, go and grab the paper, and hopefully your name's in it. And it was always really cool and really special to do that because that's what you always wanted, right? I loved it. It was my senior year, it was almost an expectation, but when they did a full article on me in the newspaper, it was the coolest thing. Me and my friend Kenny Hamilton, they did a newspaper article on us, and it was awesome to be spotlighted in that regard. It's crazy to think that this was the norm when I was in high school, and here we are 16 years later after I graduated, and that world is gone completely. It's insane. Newspapers have been replaced by clickbait news articles. All right, journalism is dead. Everybody, it truly is. Catalogs have been replaced with annoying emails and specific targeted social media ads. You never see people walking around with like little reading material anymore. Very rarely, right? It's not completely gone, but going to the car dealership and waiting for your oil change, or sitting around on a bus or at just a restaurant or just somewhere. You never see newspapers, magazines, catalogs anymore. You just don't. I'm gonna sound real boomerish in this episode. I really am. I hate this. I hate looking at this phone for information all the time. And obviously I have a choice in doing it. Buying a lot of these things is quite expensive. Producing it is expensive, so the price has gone up considerably. It was great when the newspaper would cost 50, 75 cents. All right, here's 3/4 and I'm on my way. Here's $1. I'm out of here. And now it's just, it's insane. The pricing is just insane. But those days are gone. I miss them dearly. I miss having reading material just to get me through certain slow periods. I collected magazines and catalogs and so much more. I held on to all that stuff because I liked looking back upon it. They were little time capsules for a time period that I can look back upon years later. And I don't know, it's just a lot differently now. Some people might like having the access on their phone. It is convenient. It's quick, but I can't do it. I don't grasp stuff the same when I'm reading it off of my phone. And maybe that's just me, but gives me headaches, stresses me out. I don't like looking at it all the time. I just don't. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling 34 going on 70 right now. All right, everybody, welcome to the Matt's Facts portion of this show. I'm going to talk about some of the fun statistics, some of the interesting numbers, factoids that I came across while getting ready for this video, because I was curious about really what is the state of print media. And I think everybody realizes that it's a dying art. All right, we've basically been talking about that for the first few minutes of the show. And I think if you just look around, all right, the eye test, you realize that things aren't great. And when you really look at the numbers, it's quite alarming. So I was looking through this, and let's go with circulation. So 213 U.S. counties have 0 local newspapers. I think that's tragic, personally, because I always found the local newspaper to be the best. You get these massive ones that just sell headline after headline. It's all this national and international stuff, and a lot of it really has no bearing on your personal life. I always said, even when it comes to like politics, like local elections are so much more important than some of the bigger ones. They can be. I mean, eventually shit rolls downhill, and you will be affected by stuff at that level, but being able to do within your local area it goes so much further, and you will feel a greater impact on your life. But yeah, 213 U.S. counties don't have a local newspaper. 1,524 have access to only one. And obviously there's a lot of bigger markets that have a few, but it's scary that they're calling them news deserts. These places that are just there, right? All their information that they hear is either word of mouth, which you know is dangerous, or it's all this national and international stuff. I was looking at the map. I'm looking at this website called localnewsinitiative.northwestern.edu, and quite crazy the some of the gaps that just have no access to local news. So there's that. And I was also looking at some of the numbers. All right, so 2005, that was about when I was in high school. That was my freshman year of high school. There has been a 70% drop-off in physical newspaper circulation since then, about 80 million, so to speak, as far as the amount of newspapers being circulated every day. That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. In 2 decades, that all of that went away. Readership just constantly declines, and I know there's a lot of external factors. Obviously, we are in the digital era, and we also are in an era where people don't trust the media. And unfortunately, that is understandable. That is unfortunately very understandable in a lot of cases. People just lost a little bit of interest in it. Again, journalism is dead. Completely dead. Newspaper thing is just concerning, though. But again, it's a digital era. All right, let's head on over to the magazine department, and it's a list of the top magazines by circulation. All right, I'll give you the top 15 from what we got here, what we have listed here. The New Yorker is at number 15 with 1.323 million issues in circulation. 14 is the American Legion magazine. 13, Golf Digest. 12, Real Simple. 11, Reader's Digest. 10, U.S. Weekly. 9, Texas Co-op Power. 8, NEA Today, which is the National Education Association. Number 7 is People Magazine. Number 6 is Better Homes and Gardens. Number 5 is Southern Living. 4 is American Main Street. 3, Costco Connection. Number 2, AARP Bulletin. And number 1 is AARP The Magazine, which has a circulation of 21.85 million in circulation. That's pretty wild. There's a list of 50, but yeah, some big time stuff there. It's a little bit interesting, but here are some of the specific magazine issues that have sold the best, because there's a big market for magazines. We know that. All right, so we're going to go in ascending order. Starting off in this one, 1997 People Magazine, the Diana Princess of Wales tribute magazine did 3.1 million in sales. July 1955, Confidential Magazine, Willie Mays' Luckiest Strikeout, did 3.7 million in sales. December 1995, Playboy Magazine's Farrah Fawcett Holiday Special sold 4 million copies. That was the best-selling issue of the 1990s. People Magazine, in September of 2001, did the September 11th attacks. It was titled September 11th, 2001, The Day That Shook America. And that did 4.1 million in sales. Moving up into the fives, March 1989. We got a lot of risque magazines coming up. Imagine that. March 1989, Playboy, Michael's sister in a thriller pictorial, LaToya Jackson, showing off her goods, did 5 million in sales. The next two are related to Madonna showing off her stuff. Both in September 1985, Penthouse and Playboy, and they both did 5 million in sales. September 1984, Penthouse Magazine, Miss America, Oh God, She's Nude. That is the cover title. Vanessa Williams, 5.3 million in sales. It apparently is Penthouse's highest selling issue. December of 1994, Weekly Shonen Jump, which is apparently a manga character deal. It did 6.53 million in sales. I have no idea what the heck that is, but that's what it did. November 1972, Playboy Magazine, Lena Soderbergh. Probably pronounced that wrong. It is Playboy's highest selling issue with 7.16 million in sales. Time did another. Was it Time? Let's see. People was the first one, right? Yeah, People was the first one. Time Magazine, did a September 11th, 2001 issue, and that did 7.5 million in sales. April 1965, Life did a magazine cover called Drama of Life Before Birth, and that sold 8 million copies. The second highest individual magazine issue that sold the best. August of 1964, Life magazine, The Beatles, They're Here Again, and What a Ruckus. 8.5 million in sales. And the number one was a Family Circle issue in March 1973. Not sure what the context of it was. It did 9.5 million in sales. So some interesting stuff there. Some interesting stuff to see some numbers. Love to see the numbers. Yeah, that's what I got for this portion. Let's head on over to the list. All right, everybody, it is time for my favorite part of every single video that we do. It is time to make the list. As I always encourage, please feel free to comment your list in the comment section below, or if you want to send it privately, our email at eatsleeplistpod@gmail.com. Would love to hear back from you. Would love to see your picks, your number one, your top two, your top five, your top 10, whatever it may be for any list that we do. And especially for today's list, this reading material print media list. I really got to get this name down packed. There's so many different options, but I would love to hear back from you. All right, here's how I'm going about this. This is stuff that used to be stuff like physical print media. Again, magazines, newspapers, catalogs, etc. And read through, skim through it. It wasn't like a novel with chapters or anything like that, but different various reading materials, light, easy to carry reading materials that I love. I disqualified books for myself just because I feel like books are in a entirely different class on its own. But yeah, I want to. This is the stuff that I want to go over. This quick, easy reading material, and often fun. So let's get to it. My number 10 is, I'm going to go maps here, actually. It's a little off the beaten path, but pun intended, but I enjoy maps. I do enjoy looking at maps. We don't really need maps anymore, especially with the power of GPS. And within, 10 years ago, it was the TomToms, which, I mean, it was GPS, but it was a little bit different. Man, I don't know. I'm a geography guy. I'm a world guy, if that makes sense. And I'm very curious. I talked about on the weather list about, going down to Disney. And you watch the Weather Channel. And it's really cool to see all these different cities and the names of different cities and towns and everything when you travel. All right, heading down to Orlando, we'd stop a couple times. We'd stay in West Virginia. All right, grab a hotel in West Virginia or North Carolina or something like that, and just it's cool to see what's the weather coming up and seeing that. So through maps, you have a physical way of really looking at that. You get to see, and I love all sorts of maps, right? Localized maps, international, big global maps, which I always found really cool, especially being the history nut that I am. I love looking at older maps. If I get, there's a lot that pop up from time to time that, you see stuff from the 1800s, and even earlier than that. Always really cool to look at. But I would collect them. Actually, I was doing demo in a building years ago, and there was a map from the 1980s, and it was cool. It had the Soviet Union, like the USSR, for the European map, and I always found that really neat. But yeah, I just like looking at the world, and it's special, especially the older stuff too. Because when you really think about the work that went into it, to drawing out maps, it's hard to wrap your mind around with the limited technology that they had, but they sure found a way. So yeah, maps comes in at number 10. Love collecting them, and yeah, they're just fun to look at. I really do enjoy. My number 9, I'm going to go with the local newspapers. We have two that were prominent around here, especially in my area. We have the Niagara Gazette, which I don't remember if I mentioned. I know I mentioned a local newspaper. I don't remember if I specifically said the Niagara Gazette or not. It is late, but Niagara Gazette was a very important one. I love local news. Again, I find it more intriguing, more interesting, more important to my daily life than a lot of the international, national clickbait headlines and big stories that come to pass. But I love the Niagara Gazette, again, because there was times where I got to be featured in it through sports. You hear stories about local people that you may know of, and you're excited to see them get spotlighted in the newspaper. There's local business information and so much more. They really do a good job. They're more thorough. I feel like it's always been a more honest level of journalism, the local newspaper stuff. But Niagara Gazette is great because it's specific to the city I grew up in, and I'm going to give a shout out to the Buffalo News as well. This thing was awesome. It was. The Buffalo News is massive. It covered the entire 716, basically, which is Western New York, and we only really get it on Sundays, and they had a bunch of different sections. It was really, really massive. There was the local stuff. There was national stuff. There was the sports page, which was very, very thorough and well done. And there's there was a lot. There was a lot of different layers to it. And, of course, for both of these papers, loved the Sunday funnies, the Sunday comics, whatever you want to call it. Looked forward to it as a kid. That was the one part of the paper where I actually understood, whether it was Ziggy or the Spider-Man comics or Dilbert, Animal Cracker. There were so many. Peanuts, Garfield. Loved all those. But shout out the Buffalo News Niagara Gazette. The local newspapers comes in at my number 9. Number 8, WWE Magazine. I used to love these when I got back into wrestling in about 2003. We had a Wilson Farms around the corner. That's a throwback for a lot of people. Wilson Farms was a local convenience store, eventually got bought out by 7-Eleven. But I would ride my bike or walk to this corner store once a month, and they'd have these magazines for sale. The first one I ever seen was like a June. It was like a May or June edition of Raw magazine, and it had Kane unmasked on the cover. For those who don't know, Kane is a very popular wrestler, one of my favorites of all time, but he was masked for a very long time, and then he finally unmasked. There was this very vivid red cover with his face, and it was really cool. The way that they structured the magazine was neat. They did stories on their stories. They did features on wrestlers. They did pay-per-view results, which I always enjoyed because I never really got to watch pay-per-views as a kid, but it was really cool to see a lot of the opinions and explanations on some of the pay-per-views that they did. I remember probably my favorite 2 editions of it where they did a WrestleMania one. It was WrestleMania 1 through 10, and then they did a WrestleMania 11 through 20, which was basically a giant picture spread of images, of results, and they did this just ahead of WrestleMania 21. It was really neat. But yeah, shout out to WWE magazines, Raw, SmackDown. They used to just have a plain old WWF back in the day, but I'd go to Wilson Farms with $5 in my Velcro chain wallet, and I'd buy these magazines as I seen them. So shout out to that. I'm gonna go comic books here. I'm gonna go general, just comic books in general. I know there's a big move towards digital comics now. I like the physical stuff. I do. They're very expensive now, and I have a lot of fun collecting a lot of the older stuff because you go to a lot of places and they'll sell older stock comics for 25 cents, 50 cents, sometimes $1. And I don't know, you just don't really see people walking around with comic books anymore. It's weird. It's really strange. And also too, like, I think one thing that really bothers me is that you buy comics now and they're so small. There's like not a whole lot to them. And what I mean by that is like you'll spend like $4 or $5 on a comic book now, and there's like 8 pages of nothing. Art, minimal story direction. Back in the day, it was really affordable to do it, and there was something to absorb. And like I love picking up older books. I love the new art style, but it's just not enough to justify me paying some of these prices. So older stuff is what I'm all about. But comic books in general, they're fun. I used to love walking around with a stack and powering through them. Wherever my days took me. So that's my number 7 is comic books. Number 6, fantasy football magazines. All right, this is a little bit more of a recent deal because I just started playing fantasy football in 2015, but I love buying them and holding on to them. They are time capsules. Let's take a look at who were the best players at this point in time, who were the best projected players, outlooks on entire teams. I always found that very, very interesting. And fantasy football magazines are fun. Summer didn't begin until the fantasy football magazines dropped, and they usually did in the early to mid-July. they've helped me a lot. I mean, it's easy to just go on these apps and just draft who they tell you to draft, but there was something special about just really looking at this stuff, breaking it down, analyzing it yourself, and coming to your own decision on what and who to draft, how you were going to approach this year's fantasy draft season. So that is my number 6, fantasy football magazines. Let's go to number 5. This is a lost art in video games as well. Strategy guides. I miss strategy guides. I wish I would have kept a lot of the strategy guides that my dad purchased when we were kids. When I was a kid. He wasn't a kid when I was a kid. You know what I mean. Final Fantasy was a big one for us. All right, and those were long, lengthy games, role-playing games, RPGs, and they required a little bit of assistance. And there was, I think Brady Games was the one who did theirs. Prima Games was another big one that did some strategy guides as well. But I loved the Final Fantasy ones so much because what they would do is in the back they'd have a bestiary, I think they call it. But they'd have, in alphabetical order, all of the monsters that you fight, all the monsters, boss battles that you fight in the game, grouped together, and you can see their strengths, weaknesses, what their hit points are at certain points, and it was just really cool to read through them and pick you'd read it like it's a book in a sense. The Final Fantasy ones were the best. I had shout out to my friend Andrew who found a Final Fantasy X strategy guide for me a couple years ago. I'd love to get Final Fantasy 7, 8, or 9, especially 8. I had 8. It was probably my favorite one. I beat the crap out of that thing so bad where the spine was being duct taped together and the cover was gone. I love all those books. I miss them. And but yeah, strategy guides, there's like almost no need for them anymore, but they are really cool to look at for a lot of these older games. So number 5, video game strategy guides. Number 4, I'm going to go Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I value Pro Wrestling Illustrated a lot more than just general company-specific magazines because Pro Wrestling Illustrated did a really good job of, one, being neutral. They covered everything, just about everything. It was a great way to wrap up what's going on in the wrestling world, especially, me growing up, it was the WWE. I mean, this is post WCW, but it was WWE specifically, and everything else didn't matter. TNA, New Japan, all those places didn't matter. Pro Wrestling Illustrated featured everything, and they would do rankings for every single promotion as far as who's the best in each respective division, male and female. The first one I ever purchased was actually it was a cool one. It was a list. I can't remember specifically, but it was a list of a bunch of younger wrestlers that they guesstimated would be a part of WrestleMania in 10 years. And I probably bought this in 2003, so it would have been WrestleMania 19 or going into WrestleMania 20, so they were probably suggesting who would be main eventing WrestleMania 30. And they were right about some of them. John Cena, who was only, just beginning, Batista, Randy Orton, a couple other people, but I remember that magazine pretty vividly. And then they had this like like an almanac book, but it was really neat. They had a book, I wish I could find it, but it had every single pro wrestling title belt's title history in it. It was smaller. I got that in about 2004, but it had every NWA champion listed, where they, who was the champ, who they beat, where they won it at, the dates, all that stuff. Very, very thorough. And, of course, the PWI 500, where as somebody who used to do indie wrestling, it was hilarious watching a lot of the indie wrestlers whine and cry about not getting on it. But I understand how important it was for some people to do that. So, but that was always neat. You learned a lot about the wrestling industry by getting Pro Wrestling Illustrated and reading their 500 top wrestlers in the world. Learned a lot. That was always my favorite issue to get. So, number 4, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Number 3, going to PlayStation Magazine. PlayStation Magazine. I didn't have Nintendo, so Nintendo Power really wasn't in my... it wasn't something that I was going to spend money on, even though the covers looked awesome and Nintendo Power was iconic for its own ways. I was a Team PlayStation guy growing up. And PlayStation Magazine was awesome. We used to go to Tops and get it. And what PlayStation Magazine would have a lot of the time was demo discs, which is another lost art. Not just video game strategy guides being a thing of the past, but demo discs back in the day. And it would be really cool. It'd be wrapped in plastic. You get all sorts of really cool stories. And then, hey, here's a demo disc. You can play a bunch of different games and see some trailers. And what a deal that was. I had one that I really, really enjoyed. There was a Silent Hill trailer, like preview for it. You could play 2 levels of Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. You could play Tomb Raider 3, which was really eerie and creepy. There's a lot of stuff. There was all sorts of different demo discs, which was really nice. But that was the one that stood out the most to me. But yeah, PlayStation Magazine, it was just my magazine, right? It was all the video game stuff that I was curious to hear. I remember years before I even got to play a Resident Evil game, there was the advertisement for Resident Evil 2, and what a story spread that was. Yeah, just some really cool covers. I love that a lot. Yeah, shout out PlayStation Magazine. Number 2, I'm going to go with the Big Toy Book from Toys R Us. Man, Toys R Us was the best. There is no toy store that will ever compare to Toys R Us. Nobody, even Walmart, I know they got everything. It's just not the same. It's not the same. Having an entire store dedicated to toys was awesome. But those big toy books, when they came out around Christmas time, oh my God. It had everything. It had everything. It legitimately listed everything that they would be selling. And they were special. I would love to collect them. They are very expensive for a good reason. But you go and look on these things, and they have different, you can see images on Google or wherever, and just seeing all the video game layouts. Like, okay, here's the Game Boy Color section, and here's all the Game Boy Colors that are on sale, and it's always so cool to look at. And then here's all the games that you can buy for it. And I always liked that part. I always liked looking through the video games and seeing what was up, because I wasn't well informed back then. You didn't know what was coming out, really, especially as a kid. But I remember finding out about Crash Bandicoot through the Toys R Us Big Toy Book back in 1996, which is the year I got it, and I wanted it. I knew nothing about it. I maybe seen a commercial. Yeah, they had commercials back then, so that's probably how you find out about stuff. But I just knew Crash Bandicoot was the future. He was PlayStation's answer to Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog, and I was excited. But I found out about it through the Big Toy Book, and we'd go through that when we're making our Christmas lists. We're writing letters to Santa. We're using the Big Toy Book to get us through. So that's my number 2. And my number 1 is Game Informer. I had several boxes full of Game Informer, and my dad had a GameStop membership account, and what he would do is, if you're paying for this, you get Game Informer sent to you. All right, sent to you for free. You pay, I don't know, like an annual fee or a monthly fee to be a Game Informer member, and you get the magazine sent right to your house. And it was pretty sweet. It was pretty sweet. I loved the breakdowns of upcoming games. They'd score all the games that were coming out. And they'd also retroactively look back at some stuff. It was just good reading material. I remember the Resident Evil 4 Spotlight, which this is the big It wasn't the first Resident Evil game that I ever played, but when I seen how great it was and that they gave it a 10 a rating, it was the first perfect score that I ever seen in a Game Informer magazine. I knew I had to have it, and that started my love and affinity for it. I remember the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas cover. It was basically all white, and they had one of the characters on the front cover, and the expose on this game was insane. How advanced it would be with some of the things, with the different missions. And if you ever played Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, you know it was a very thorough game. You can shoot gas tanks and do all sorts of missions inside buildings. You can buy food, work out, all sorts of stuff. It was really cool and really ahead of its time, but I knew about all that because of Game Informer. It enlightened me. But there it is, everybody. My top 10 reading materials, print media reading materials list. Thank you so much for listening. Please, again, comment. Would love a subscription. All right. Wouldn't hate that. Love a like. It goes a long way for me. But that's a wrap. That is a wrap on today's episode. Love you all. We are coming back next week for Thanksgiving week and some Thanksgiving essentials on Monday. Thank you so much. And until next time, do you even list?